Thank you. So good morning, everyone. Like you heard, I'm the founder of Palo Alto Networks. Maybe a few words about Palo Alto Networks, and then we'll talk about what's important. Like you heard, I started Palo Alto Networks in 2005, 20 years ago. The idea behind Palo Alto Networks is to, over time, take more and more cybersecurity functions and deliver them as a platform on a best-of-breed basis. Best-of-breed meaning each of our functions can compete against standalone products and win just based on that function, based on the merits of that function. And of course, when you buy all of that as a platform, you get all the benefits of a platform, meaning it's cheaper, it's easier to deploy, it is easier to manage, it's easier to add functions, it's easier to remove functions if you don't like them, and also it works better because you have one brain making decisions based on all the information that's available, instead of 20 different brains making 20 different decisions based on 20 subsets of the information. So that's the idea behind Palo Alto Networks. This idea, we started with network security, like you heard, with a firewall and many different things running on top of the firewall. Then we moved to cloud security, then we moved to security operations center and other areas as well. The idea of platformization, of taking many different cybersecurity functions and delivering them as a platform is working really well. Palo Alto Networks is today by far the largest cybersecurity vendor in the world. We have probably more than 100,000 customers around the world. We are a Fortune 500 company, meaning it's one of the largest 500 companies in the United States with a market cap of $130 billion. So it worked. Despite being relatively new, it worked really well. Meaning customers like it, like the idea of buying one thing that does all the different cybersecurity functions that they need. So that's the idea behind Palo Alto Networks. And today I want to talk about, well, something that's related to the platform, to platformization, something that requires platformization, but we'll get to it. So we're entering a new era in cybersecurity, in which it's becoming extremely difficult to keep the adversaries, the bad people, from getting into your infrastructure. Okay? I'm not saying don't try to do it. There's still reasons to do it, but it's virtually impossible. It's impossible to keep them out. And the reason it's impossible to keep them out is because we never have a 100% success rate. Right? I mean, anyone who tells you that they have something that can stop 100% of attacks is probably not saying the truth. We are going to miss some attacks, and 97% detection and prevention rates is a really good rate, but if you get to 97%, that means you miss 3 out of 100. The question is, how difficult is it for an attacker to develop 100 different attacks and try them such that one succeeds? And the answer used to be, it's extremely difficult for attackers, it's very expensive for attackers to develop 100 different attacks and try them such that one succeed. And today the answer is, it's very easy. It's very easy to develop 100 different attacks, and then probably one of them will get through. And the reason it's becoming much easier to develop new attacks is thanks to automation and especially Gen AI. So I'll give you a few examples. Let's start with phishing, okay? It used to be that phishing campaigns, you just create an email, you send it to all the employees in the company, and you hope that someone clicks. It's different today. Today, they can generate phishing emails that are written specifically for each and every of your employees. They can get the list of employees from LinkedIn, including their titles, what they do for the company, their background, and then with different LLMs, they can figure out, based on publicly available information, who their friends are, what are their hobbies, and so on, automatically generate a different email, completely different email for each of the employees and send it. It's very difficult to detect that. There are still ways to do it based on embedded URLs and things like that, but very difficult to detect when each employee gets a separate email. Anti-malware. So here's the issue. an adversary that sits down and writes a new piece of malware, something that we've never seen before, the only way we know, there are two ways for us to know about it. The first way is with a sandbox, right? So we've never seen it before. We're not going to be able to stop it in the gateway. So, or on the endpoint with anti-malware on the endpoint. So it's either the sandbox that's going to run this new thing and it has a 80, 90% chance of figuring out that it's malware. Usually the way we know there is a completely new malware in the world is because one of you gets attacked, and then there is an incident response. We figure out what the malware was, we take the malware, we understand it, we stop it, and then we're really good at taking that malware and then stopping all the derivations of that malware. Meaning if someone takes that malware and changes it a little bit and then uses it, we know how to stop it. Okay? Usually we use supervised machine learning for that. The thing is that we've come to a point where, first, developing new pieces of malware is becoming much easier with LLM-based tools, with Gen AI-based tools like Cursor and others. And more importantly, taking an existing malware and asking a Gen AI tool to completely rewrite it in such a way that then we cannot detect it has also become very easy. So finding malware is becoming very, very difficult. The next example is command and control infrastructure. Asking Gen AI to take an existing command and control infrastructure and modifying it in such a way that the protocol is a little bit different and other things inside it that we use to detect are different has become very easy. And we can continue, okay? This idea of being able to develop things, develop new code, or take existing code and completely modify it with Gen AI is creating serious challenges to being able to detect those things in real time as they try to enter your organization. So that's why I said we're entering a new era in cybersecurity. We're entering a new era where we have to completely change the way we think about cybersecurity from focusing almost exclusively on keeping them out to assuming that they've made it inside. Now we need to go and find them and stop them. Okay? We have to completely change our mindset. And if you don't, good luck. No, really, there's no other option. We've got to start assuming that they are inside the infrastructure and we need to find them and stop them quickly. So the question is, how do we do it? How do we assume that someone is inside? Well, assuming they're inside is easy. It's a good assumption. But how do we, given that assumption, find them and stop them very, very quickly? So there are two primary ways of doing it. Probably the most popular way is to look for the command and control connections that they use. So when an adversary gets into your organization, in many cases, somehow they get some piece of malware deployed. We call it a RAT, a remote access tool. And now that malware is installed, the malware will open a connection to the outside because there is a firewall on the way inside, right? So it will open a connection to the outside, to the adversary, and now the adversary has control over your infrastructure, okay? That's one way of doing it. There are other ways of creating command and control connections, but that specific way is generally the Achilles heel of many attacks and is relatively easy to find using a good network security solution. With the best tools that we have to find them are using machine learning, HTTP analysis, and machine learning-based DNS analysis to look for domain generation algorithms, tunneling of information inside DNS, and so on. Highly recommended to deploy those things in the infrastructure. So advanced machine learning-based URL filtering, HTTP filtering, and DNS filtering. They can stop a good amount of these connection-based command and control connections. It's not enough. The reason it's not enough is because there are many cases where the command and control connection is using something completely different that we just can't detect and stop. I'll give you an example. If you allow your employees to access blogging sites, we've seen attackers using blogging sites on the internet to blog instructions for the malware. So the malware will read instructions from a blog post, perform the instructions, and then write the results to the blog post. They can do it with Office documents, with Google documents, with anything. Like we've seen them doing it with Facebook posts, with Twitter tweets, like using a Twitter feed as a command and control connection. Those are difficult to detect. We're not going to be able to detect them in the network, inline, in real time. Okay, so we need something better than that. Again, we need something better that is really going to address this issue of they're inside our infrastructure, we need to find them and stop them very quickly in a much more broader way, in something that just works for almost all use cases, okay? So there is something like that. Today, you are doing it. I mean, I hope most of you are doing it. And the way you do it is you're doing it in the Security Operations Center, especially if your Security Operations Center is internal or if you outsource it to someone really, really good and expensive. You will have a function in the SOC, in the Security Operations Center, called hunting, and you'll have hunters whose job is to look for these attacks. How do they do it? They pray a lot because it's really, really difficult. And then they look at the SIEM, they look at the billions of logs you have in the SIEM, and they try to get lucky finding this one thing that's going to tell them, hey, something is wrong here. Yeah, sometimes they write rules, correlation rules, filters, and so on to try to look for those things. They need a lot of luck. They cannot do it at very large scale, meaning a human hunter can investigate very, very few, a handful of cases every day. And if you measure how well they do it, meaning if you measure on average, how much time does it take from the minute someone gets into your organization, we call it patient zero, until the SOC knows about it, and you average that over time, it's the mean time to detect, MTTD, you find out that it takes weeks on average for a good SOC to find that someone breached the organization, okay? So human hunters can do it. It takes them weeks to do that, which is, of course, not acceptable in a world where it can happen anytime because it's so easy to get into your organization. So the question is, what do we do? How do we take that function, the SOC function of hunting, and make it run not in 3 weeks, but in minutes? And the answer is, at least our answer to it, and I don't know anyone else who's answering it, but our answer to it is do what the humans do, just do it with computers, with software, okay? So that's what we do. So essentially what we do is we collect a lot of information from the same sources that the humans use when they look for these attacks manually in the SIEM. So we collect information from the network, from endpoints, both user endpoints and servers and workloads. We collect information from identity and access management system. We collect information from cloud logs, all the different cloud logs, from application logs, from, if possible, source code and CI/CD pipelines, and whatever we can. The same information that analysts, human analysts would use, same information sources we collect. The reason I'm saying the same information sources is because we collect much more information than you would collect into the SIEM. Today you collect too much information into the SIEM because humans can't deal with it. Machine learning can deal with much more, so we collect much more. Okay, so we collect very, very deep information from the network, like all HTTP headers in both directions, all the DNS traffic, all the DHCP traffic, and much more. From the endpoint, we want to know anytime anyone does anything other than reading and writing a file or a socket. We want to know anything about processes and threads, them being created, deleted, communicating with each other, injecting data into each other, using mutexes, and so on. There's a long list of things that we want to know that are happening on the endpoint. We collect all of that. It's about 200 megabytes per day on average per user endpoint and few gigabytes per server. And so on. We collect a lot of information, and then we do the same investigations that the humans would do, the human hunters would do. We just do it with machine learning, which is an old type of AI. You know, if you go to our booth out there, you'll see it's called precision AI. It's called precision AI because it's a very accurate version of AI. It's not like these GPT toys that you're playing with. It's actually working, okay? It's not going to give you answers if you ask it questions, but it's really good at doing what humans do when it comes to learning things from data, okay? So we have machine learning models that try to model what the humans would do to look for attacks. It's just that rather than investigating a few events every day, those machine learning models investigate millions of events every second in each of your infrastructure separately, okay? The machine learning models that we use, and today we have more than 2,000 of them, are all created by attack experts. So specifically in our case, we use ex-military and other security services people. So people that in their military service or in their national service used to attack other countries. We hire them and we use their knowledge of attacking to create models that detect these kind of attacks. As I said, we have more than 2,000 of those today, and it's working extremely well, okay? Some of our customers have seen reduction of the mean time to detect and then the mean time to respond, the time it takes to respond and remediate and recover from the attack. They've seen it going down to a few minutes. So on average, a few minutes from the time someone breached their infrastructure, the event was done, including with human in the middle. Usually there is a SOC analyst in the middle, just making sure that the decision of the system as to what to do makes sense, and then they say yes, and the system goes out and executes it. Okay, so in a world where we have to assume that they are inside because it's so easy to get inside, the solution is take what the humans do to detect someone on the inside, humans in the SOC, and automate it using machine learning, programmed by security experts, by, in this case, attack experts. So that's the idea behind it. And we can talk a little bit more about it because I think it's important to understand the implications of it. So maybe to explain how this is disrupting, it's completely changing. It is disrupting the cyber defense industry. I want to explain a little bit more about how it works, okay? It's going to be a little bit technical. I'm sorry for those who prefer not to hear technical, deep technical details. It's not going to be deep technical details, some technical details, but give me just 2 minutes, okay? When we start getting all these millions of events per second, or tens of millions, depending on the customer size, we collect today about we passed 10 petabytes of data per day from our customers, okay? And we have quite a few exabytes of data that's been collected in the past few years. So when we get those million of events from each of you separately, what we do is two things first, before we even start to detect anything. The first thing we do is we identify entities in your infrastructure. Entities that we identify are employees, humans. We want to know who's working for you, like what is it that they're doing? How does their day look? What is it that they do throughout the day? And we even, based on that information, find groups of employees. No directory required. We don't connect to the directory for that. So that work together. Like we know that these 3 employees do more or less the same work because we're seeing them doing the same work throughout the day. That's important. You'll see in a second why. The second the second type of entities that we look for are applications. So we learn about the applications in your infrastructure and how these applications behave. What is it that they do when it comes to files and sockets and threads and processes? What is it, how do they communicate with each other? Which applications interact with which applications, with which humans, and so on. And the third thing we learn about are servers and workloads. So we learn about your servers, your VMs, your containers in the infrastructure, and same thing. What is it that they do throughout the day? So that happens as the data comes in, and over time we learn more and more and more. It takes about 2 weeks to get to the initial point of the learning being done. So that's one thing that we do. And the second thing that we do before we start detecting bad things is something called stitching. What stitching means is we want to take all these different events that come in and put them into timelines. Okay, each event goes to a timeline of this led to this, led to this. So for example, if you have an employee that's going out to Office 365 and downloads a PowerPoint presentation and then opens the PowerPoint presentation on the endpoint, and somehow there's an exploit there and things happen. So we're going to see that they went to PowerPoint because we see the connection in the firewall. And then we're the CASB, the Cloud Access Security Broker, so we connect through APIs to Office 365, and we see the file being pulled out with permissions and everything. We even get a copy of the file so that we can run it through our sandbox to identify bad things in it. Then we see the file being downloaded through the firewall. We see on the endpoint, we see the file getting there. We see the file being created because we collect all the file operations. We see the file being opened, and then we see that that process created a new process or a new thread. That's probably the exploit. And that new process is now downloading something from the internet, installing it, and then from there they go to the data center. So we want to create a timeline of all these different events. This is something, by the way, that your SOC analysts do every time there is a security incident. When they investigate a security incident, they will spend the first few hours stitching what happened. How did they get in and what happened after that? We do it millions of times per second on everything. We don't care if it's an attack or not. We just do it for everything. This is the amount of compute that we need in order to do what I'm describing. So now that we know who the entities are in the organization and all the different timelines of events that happen in the organization, we can start running the machine learning processes. I'm not going to describe exactly how it works. I'll give you one example of how it's different than what you might be doing today. So that example will be looking for large file uploads. I've seen many security operation centers where they have a rule that says, if you see a big file being uploaded, we want an alert. Now, how big of a file? They keep tuning it so that they don't get too many alerts. You know, you can start with, every time you see a file bigger than 10 megabytes, I want an alert. Okay, you get 1,000 alerts per day. Then you change it. Okay, every time you see a file bigger than 100 megabytes, I want an alert. You still get too many alerts. Until you get to the right level, I don't know, 10 gigabyte, 10 gigabyte, whatever, they only get one alert every day. Hey, great, we have time to investigate it. A file bigger than 1 gigabyte is dangerous, we want to know about it. That's the way it's done traditionally in the SOC. Of course, it's a joke, it doesn't work. It only leads to issues. How would you do it with machine learning? So what you would do with machine learning is every time you see a file upload, you let the machine learn not just the size of the file, if we have information about the contents of the file, but also how we got to that point. Because we have that timeline, we use all the timeline as what's called features for the machine learning, meaning we see how we got to the point where the file was uploaded, and we see what happened after that. So that gives us much more information to decide whether this upload is valid or not. We also do it in the context of the entities. So it depends on what is it that the user that uploaded the file is doing usually. Do they usually upload these kind of files in terms of size and type and so on? What about the people working with that user? Do they do it? Maybe the user's never done it, but 3 other people that work in the same department, because we've seen that they do the same job, do it all the time. Which applications did they use to upload? Which application it was downloaded to? Which machines were involved? Which entities-based machines were involved? So the machine learning is considering all of that information when it's deciding whether the upload was valid or not. So it's not a static rule that says if it's bigger than whatever, I want an alert. It's if it's different than what usually happens in the infrastructure, based on timelines, users, applications, and machines, I want to know about it. So that's why it's much more accurate than trying to put rules in the SIEM. And that's why it works so well. And I'm telling you all this story because there's something important behind it, and that's the disruption that we're seeing on the defense side. If you listen to everything I said in the last 2 minutes, you will see that nothing that I said was related to any attack technique used by the adversaries, by the attackers. Meaning, the machine learning is not using any knowledge about how they got into the organization and how they managed to get to the file and how they managed to upload that file to the internet and through one of your users and so on. We don't need to know that. We don't care how the attack happened. What we care about in this paradigm, in this system, is that something happened that is not happening usually in your infrastructure. There is an operation that happened that just looks weird. It just doesn't make any sense because it's very different than what we've seen before. Not different, this is the first time we see a big file being uploaded. Different with many, many, many more parameters around it, which means it's really different. So if you think about what I'm describing, in any attack, you're going to see something that doesn't make sense, because that's the goal of the attacker, to do something that shouldn't be done in your infrastructure. And if we are really good at detecting those things that don't make sense, we're going to know that there is an attack very quickly, regardless of how the attacker is attacking. Every now and then, customers are asking me, what do you think will be the new type of attacks in 3 years? I don't know. Now the answer is, I don't care. I really don't care what they're going to do in 3 years or 5 years or 10 years. All I care about is that I want to be really, really good at detecting things in your infrastructure that don't make sense. Because that's how I'm going to detect and stop them in 1 minute. And as I said, it's working extremely well with customers all over the world, including here in Denmark. Okay? And it's a completely new paradigm that is disrupting the cybersecurity market because it's the only thing that works today. Okay, we're beyond the point where we can detect the specific attacks that the adversaries are using. The specific malware or the specific exploit where we still can detect exploit, that's not automated yet. Or the specific phishing email or the specific command and control connection or the specific injection or the specific that and so on. We're beyond the point where we can detect it, and we are at the point where we just don't care about it. We have something that's much better. Something that the adversaries can't do anything about, which is we detect things that don't make sense, which are always a part of an attack. Okay? So it is disrupting the cybersecurity market. It is changing the way we approach stopping attacks, detecting and stopping attacks, and it works extremely well. I wish we could have done it 30 years ago. We couldn't, because to do this we need a lot of compute, a lot of storage, like I said, hexabytes of storage, and until not too long ago, it was just impossible to do that. We're now at a point where it's possible to do it because of the availability of compute and storage at large scale around the world. Okay, so now it's the right time to do that. What else can I say about that system? Maybe a few other things. So that system changes or replaces everything that's in the SOC today. Customers that deploy systems like that, they get rid of pretty much everything they have in the SOC. You don't need the SIEM, of course. You don't need your ticketing system in the SOC. This takes care of everything. You don't need a SOAR, like security orchestration, automation and response. This takes care of that, of the response. You don't need EDR, NDR, UEBA, CDR, and so on. All the detection all the different types of detection are part of that system. It pretty much replaces everything in the Security Operations Center, and it also changes the way the Security Operations Center works to the machines are doing the work, and the humans are there to help the machines. They help the machines when the machines don't know what to do, and they help the machine in making the decision as to whether to actually go and change something in the infrastructure. They verify that, if you want to, that a change that's about to happen makes sense and is not going to cause more damage than it fixes. Other than that, the SOC is running itself with a system like that. One more important observation about the system. As I said, the system needs a lot of data. It needs data from the network, it needs data from endpoints, from the cloud, from applications, from SaaS infrastructure, from source code that you might be developing, CI/CD pipelines, identity and access management systems, and more. There are more data sources. And here's something interesting about machine learning and about AI in general. With AI, there is a very tight, very strict relationship between the models that you use, in this case machine learning models, but it can be other like language models and so on. So there's a very tight relationship between the models that you use and the data that they need. Machine learning can't work with, okay, give me whatever data you have, I'll just deal with it. It doesn't work like that. Each model specifies the types and the data that it needs, which means that it's very difficult and it's probably going to be impossible to run AI and in this case machine learning in a multi-vendor environment. Okay? It's not just a cybersecurity issue, it's not a Palo Alto Networks issue, it's not an IT issue. Like, if you think about autonomous cars, like self-driving cars, you're never going to be able to buy the car from one vendor and then the different sensors from different vendors. I want the LiDAR from this vendor, I want the sonar from this vendor, I want the radar from this vendor, and I want the cameras for that vendor because I like them. And then I'm going to buy the software itself, the self-driving software, from yet another vendor. It's never going to be like that. You're going to buy a system. You're going to buy the car with the sensors and with the software pre-integrated, take it or leave it. Okay? No modifications possible. It's true for all machine learning, it's true for all AI. So in our system today, what we do is we do collect data from third parties, meaning if you don't have Palo Alto Networks in the network and you want to collect it from some other network security vendor, fine, we'll take it. If you don't have Palo Alto Networks on your endpoints, but you have another vendor there and they can provide some data, usually they provide very little data, we'll take it, and so on. It's just that if you look at the more than 2,000 models that we have, machine learning models that we have, you're not going to be able to run all the 2,000. You're going only to be able to run those that can deal also with data that's coming from third-party systems. Let's say you can run, I don't know, 800 out of the 2,000 models based on your existing infrastructure. That means that if an attack comes in and it's one of those 1,200 models that you don't run that's going to first detect it, you're not going to detect it. You're going to have to wait until something happens that one of those 800 models detect, which means that your mean time to detect is not going to be minutes, it's going to be much more than that. It can get. I've seen customers not using Palo Alto Networks at all in their infrastructure, lowering the mean time to detect to below 1 hour using that system. I mean, 1 hour is still better than 3 weeks, but it's not 1 minute. After 1 hour, it's hard to respond. You want to do it to detect very, very quickly so the response is very localized. But it works. But long term, really what it means, and again, it's not a cybersecurity issue and not Palo Alto Networks issue, is if you want to start using AI, different types of AI, but specifically in this case, machine learning, in your organization, you're going to have to first choose your AI vendor, and that's going to tell you what else you need to deploy in the infrastructure in order to collect data for that AI vendor. The world of mix and match vendors in cybersecurity, in networking, in other areas of IT, that world is gone. Unless you believe you don't need to use different types of AI to run your business. AI means I choose my AI vendor for cybersecurity, I choose my AI vendor for networking, I choose my AI vendor for CRM and for ERP and so on, and that determines which products from which vendors I need to deploy in order to feed that AI with data and in order to enable that AI to take action. Okay? So, sorry, that's the world we're entering. And of course, you can always say, I don't care, I'm going to continue to be multi-vendor, I like this vendor, and that vendor, and I'm going to stop the attackers from coming in. That's also fine. I just don't believe it works, but you can try that. We will either meet before the breach or after the breach. I always say, our salespeople always want to sell you right now because they want their commission. My goal is for you to be secure. So I say, we can meet after the breach. That's also okay. But after the breach, there are no discounts. So yeah, that's where we see the world going. That's where we see, again, it's a big disruption. Or one thing I didn't say about that product. The product is called XIM. It's part of a family of products called Cortex. The name is less important. The more important thing is that it's the most successful product in the history of the cybersecurity market. By far the most successful product. That product took 2 years to get to $1 billion in sales. Never been done before. That product has almost 100% close rate, meaning close to 100% of the customers that try it end up buying it. So if you don't want to buy it, don't try it. If you try it, no, because if you try it, you'll buy it, and then you're going to have to start replacing all your other cybersecurity vendors with Palo Alto networks. So if you don't want to go that route, don't even try the product. I'm not kidding, okay? So by far the most successful product in the history of cybersecurity the cybersecurity market, which means that, look, it's a real disruption. It is completely changing the way we deal with attacks coming from the outside. Or really, we change the way we deal with the bad people, right? I mean, we assume they're inside, we find them, we stop them within minutes in ways that are completely independent of the actual attack method. Works great. Okay? That's all I had for today. Thank you.
Well, Nia, I have to call you back, even though it was your time, because I was charged by my event team to find a present for you.
Okay.
And I had to somehow link it to this event. And then I found a picture. You won't know it. But it's probably the greatest Danish rock band ever, with a very international name called Gasoline. Most of the people here will know them, you don't know them. But they're playing at the Roskilde Festival for the very first time in '71.
Okay, when I was born.
When you were born.
71.
I didn't know that. Even more linking. And then I found the connection because I've seen you many, many times, but you're always wearing t-shirts. So I figured I'll get you a Gasoline t-shirt.
Okay.
And you probably won't. And if you don't want to bring it home, I'm sure some of the Palo Alto people in Denmark would love it. And
I will wear it.
There's even a denim jacket with Gasoline as well.
Okay.
I don't know.
Thank you so much.
See ya.
Thank you.